Welcome back. Well, the CEO of the Panama Canal Authority is denying President-elect Donald Trump's claim that China is now controlling the Panama Canal, a vital trade route, telling the Wall Street Journal yesterday, quote, the accusations that China is running the canal are unfounded. China has no involvement whatsoever in our operations. Trump has been calling for the U.S. to take control of the Panama Canal, as well as take control of Greenland for national security reasons, he said. He refused to rule out taking both territories by military force. Denmark's foreign minister said Greenland could become independent if it wants, it's what residents want, but it's unlikely to become a U.S. state. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken also pushed back on Trump's calls to acquire Greenland. Watch this.
The idea expressed about Greenland is obviously not a good one, but maybe more important, it's obviously one that's not going to happen. So we probably shouldn't waste a lot of time talking about it.
Joining me now is retired two-star Marine Corps general and the Punaro Group CEO. He is the author of, If Confirmed, an insider's view of the national security confirmation process, Arnold Punaro. General, great to see you. Thanks very much for being
Privileged
here.
To be here.
So you have real authority on the Panama Canal. You heard what Anthony Blinken said. Your thoughts?
Maria, I was a Senate staffer when President Carter sent the Panama Canal Treaty to the Senate to be ratified. My boss was very concerned about protecting the neutrality of the canal because it was so important to our economy and national security. So we drafted a reservation that was adopted as part of the Senate ratification process that allows the United States of America to protect the canal in perpetuity. So if the neutrality of the canal is threatened, if the international security is threatened, we have the right to intervene militarily if we need to. My thought here is that we ought to have Mike Waltz, as he takes over as National Security Advisor, direct an updated assessment of those two provisions. Number two, the U.S. Southern Command, the President should direct the commander of the U.S. Southern Command, and that's why it's so important to get his Secretary of Defense confirmed on day one, to update their military contingency plan. They're probably updated, but I don't know that for sure. Right. And three, Marco Rubio, when he's up for confirmation before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the committee of jurisdiction for that treaty, remind people what the treaty actually says. So we have the absolute right to intervene to protect the neutrality and international shipping of the canal.
We want to get to the confirmation process with you in a second, but I wasn't surprised to hear that China is trying to dominate and China could be controlling. But you heard what the CEO of the Panama Canal said. He said, no, China is not dominating, is not running the Panama Canal. What do you know about them? I mean, it sounds like that would be China's MO, right? But
I would say it would absolutely be their MO. I don't have personal knowledge. That's why I think it's important for Mike Waltz to get the experts to look and do a detailed assessment of it. But China is dominating and marching out militarily, economically, technologically, and diplomatically. So it would be certainly within the way they're doing everywhere else in the world.
Right, exactly.
One of the questions I have is so many people are criticizing Donald Trump for his statements about the Panama Canal and what he's saying about Greenland. And yet it does seem like common sense in some ways that we would want to have, you know, our interests would be represented by doing these things. What do you say about Greenland? What do you say about the Panama Canal?
I would say on Greenland, my older brother Anthony served in the Air Force and actually was stationed in Greenland at Sandstrom Air Force Base, the northernmost post. It's a very important country militarily, economically, and what I would do there also is the same thing. Have Mike Waltz do an assessment. How do we increase our work with Greenland militarily, economically, diplomatically? It's got a lot of natural resources, and then determine and provide a lot of options. What you want to give the commander-in-chief and what I think his incoming national security team will be a range of options to deal with these kind of issues. But you've got to deal with your eyes full open. I mean, the Chinese, again, they're on the march militarily, economically, technologically.
Of course.
Don't you think this is sending a signal, a really clear signal to China and Russia both? These are sort of symbolic moments where he's saying, like, you're not going to mess with us.
Absolutely. We're seeing that already. Iran pulling out of Syria. We're seeing in the United States of America internally the Democrats getting ready to vote for the Lake and Riley bill because they understand they're going to seal the border. So we're seeing that happen already. But it's really important for this national security team to get on board on day one, and because we have such a broad range of challenges that we've got to deal with in the world and at home, we got to get started. Their motto is ready on day one. I'm confident they'll be ready on day one. The United States Senate needs to give give them, the people, up or down votes on day one so they can get in there and help the president.
Mark?
We have to make moves because China and Russia are making moves.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been snatching up land in the Arctic. They're running military drills and operations in the Arctic to control that trade route, which makes Greenland specifically, outside of the Panama Canal, even more important.
Right.
And my question for you is the conversation about Greenland just a pipe dream, or is this something that could actually materialize?
It should materialize because we know now that I'll call them Soviet submarines, they're Russian submarines, can get to the East Coast a lot faster now because of the melting of the polar ice cap and everything. And so having that barrier and having our sonobuoys and having the ability militarily to operate that far north to keep and keep up with them, I think would be really important. So that's what I say. We've got to give the commander-in-chief, the President Trump, some options in all these areas. But you're right. We're way behind the power curve in so many different parts of the world.
And you know, he's got to get his team in place. That takes me to the confirmation process. Let's talk about it. Trump's cabinet nominees scheduled to testify ahead and before the Senate next week. Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth and Veterans Affairs Secretary nominee Doug Collins confirmation hearings both slated for next Tuesday, January 14th. The Secretary of State nominee Marco Rubio will also testify before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee next Wednesday. That's the 15th. What are you expecting from these hearings? Walk us through this process. You just wrote a whole book about it.
Right. I've been doing this for a long time, Maria, and I think the expectation is I think the nominees, all the nominees you just mentioned, are going to do extremely well in their confirmation hearings. The number one thing, though, is for the Senate committees of jurisdiction, the president actually can't technically nominate anyone till the afternoon of January 20th when he's sworn in. He'll go over to the president's room right after he's sworn in, sign the nomination papers, they'll go right in. The committees will already have had their hearings. They can then get a quorum, report the nominations back out to the Senate. Those national security nominations need to deserve an up or down vote on day one. Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Director of the CIA, Director of the Veterans and things. And so, and not get delayed. There's a precedent. We've always, for an incoming new president, allowed him to have his Secretary of Defense confirmed on day one, with few exceptions. And so I hope that that's what the Senate will do. I certainly know they will do that with Marco Rubio. I don't believe Doug Collins has any issues. Hopefully they'll get the director of the CIA in on day one. But Pete Hegseth deserves an up or down vote on day one in the United States Senate.
And John Ratcliffe, I would imagine, is going to come along swimmingly. I mean, he's obviously has an incredible resume, and he's slated to be the incoming CIA director.
Correct. Chairman Cotton, the new chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, with his ranking member, Mark Warner. They've got the hearing set up. I believe that one should and will move quickly as well. Again, the problem in the Senate is it takes unanimous consent. So all 100 senators have to agree. If they don't agree to allow a vote on one of these nominees on day one, then Leader Thune is going to have to file cloture. There's 30 hours of post-cloture debate. That could delay it 2 or 3 days. We're in a world today where we can't delay for 5 minutes, much less 2 or 3 days.
Sure. Jonathan.
I want to ask you a question about the state of the military currently after 4 years of Joe Biden.
I'm glad. I was hoping to ask that as well. I'm so glad you're bringing this up.
And it seems to me, anyone I talk to that retires from the military, one of their main complaints is this DEI wokeness that's just basically soul-crushing, morale-crushing, also crushes recruitment. How big of an issue is that, and what does the military need to do to turn it around if it is an issue?
Well, let me start with a bigger strategic thing. I do not think we actually have a sufficient national security strategy to deter our adversaries. You want to be able to have deterrence, and for deterrence to work, you have to have the military capability. It has to be credible, and our adversaries have to believe you will use it. We need to be able to deter 2 major theater wars on a near simultaneous basis. Bridge Colby coming in as the Undersecretary of Policy, real expert in this area. So you've got to do that. That's step number 1. Step number 2, we've got to basically get our military more prepared and ready than it is to deal in the world we're in. One of the problems we're having, obviously, is these issues of recruiting and some of the areas where they've gone overboard in terms of not doing decisions based on merit and based on capabilities and based on qualifications creates a lot of problems
So
for our military.
all of this DEI and all of this politically correct stuff that was put into the military actually has hurt the military, actually has hurt our defense. I mean, think about where we are with regard to China. And you know, Jack Keane has been on this program every week for several years now, and he's been saying this for so many years. He said we're outmanned, we're outgunned, we're outshipped when you look at the Navy in particular for China versus the United States.
Maria, I have immense respect for Jack Keane. Anything Jack Keane says, I'm going to agree with. And the problem is, all of those things are accurate. The problem is we are spending in constant dollars more money on defense than we spent in the peak of the Reagan buildup, and our military is 50% smaller, less fighting capability. That's why I'm excited about what Elon Musk is going to do on Doge so that we can get more bang for the buck. We're spending the money, we just aren't getting the military capability coming out the other end.
Wow.
And the DEI is one of the big problems, as you pointed out.
Really an important conversation. You're a Marine, aren't you, sir?
Yes, I am.
Semper Fi, thank you for your service to our great nation.
You're quite welcome.
All right,
Privileged to
thank
be
you.
here.
General Arnold Punaro. Stay with us. We'll be right back.